and welcome back to my channel. Before we jump into my series of videos, I'd like to run the same intro that I'm going to run in every video that I do this week. If you are one of the people that put trans rights or human rights all up and down my YouTube, thank you. If you came from TikTok and you followed that video from TikTok and you listened and you said, hey, they're being gross and ugh, the super straights are being gross, thank you. Please continue. If you want to catch my attention, nothing will catch it faster than saying trans rights are human rights and Black Lives Matter all up and down my page. I will love you eternally for it. So if that's you, I heart you. Everything about you, I heart. Hello, we need to talk about voter suppression laws in Georgia because they're bad. We're going to talk about one right now specifically, and then we'll get into a couple others. But I specifically want to mention House Bill 531 that has been presented. And let's just go through what it wants to do and then we'll talk about it. Okay, it requires absentee voters to submit their driver's license number, state number, or a copy of their photo ID with their ballot. I cannot state how much they were I grew up dirt poor and a lot of people I knew couldn't afford to get a state photo ID. That is why voter ID laws are so restrictive, because they do hurt the poor. They keep the poor from voting, because just getting all of the paperwork together to get an ID can be about $175. And that is extremely expensive for someone living paycheck to paycheck who can't afford food. So asking them to go through that extra step of having to do that is awful. Is absolutely awful. All right, let's go on to the next one that's in this law. Shorten the window in which voters can request an absentee ballot. They would have to do so between 11 weeks before the election and 2 Fridays before the election. Currently, Georgia can request absentee ballots up to 180 days before the election. The reason this is so bad is, first off, absentee ballots during a pandemic was absolutely essential in keeping people safe. But not just that, a lot of elderly vote through absentee ballots. They do. They vote through absentee ballots because they can't make it to the polls, and not everybody's willing to drive granny to the polls. An absentee ballot is crucial for them, and the mail is incredibly slow, and that extra amount of time gives you the ability to get the ballot, make sure that you've got it, and then return it with enough time to ensure that it gets there. And with the post office being as screwed up as it is right now, with the joy being in the post office, this is absolutely crucial that they have as much time as possible to get their ballot, turn it in, and ensure that it got there. All right, next. Prevent election officials from mailing absentee ballots until 4 weeks before the election, which again narrows that window of time that people can get their ballot, meaning that it might not arrive in time. So like I was saying before my phone shut off, that would be 4 weeks is not enough time to get it and get it back. It took my mom 6 weeks for them to send out her ballot, like when we knew they sent it out, and for them to receive it. And guess what? I dropped it off at a drop box. It took them 6 weeks to get it to us. So, it would seriously. Okay, limit early voting period to hours during the 3 business hours during the 3 weeks preceding the election, plus the second Saturday before the election. Early voting will no longer be allowed any other day, including Sundays. That's because they're trying to cut off Black voters, especially voters that do those get out to the polls and vote on Sundays. They know that minority voters are more likely to vote early. They are more likely to vote on weekends. Poor people are more likely to vote on weekends because they have to work during the week. So they are trying to limit the access to people being able to vote. Okay. Oh, this one's cool. I don't have to find this enough. It's right here. Okay. Clarify that no one can give food or water to people standing in lines to vote. Separately, Republican Secretary Brad Raffensperger had argued that this is against the law, and he has announced his intention to start enforcing it more. That's right. If you're standing in line for 10 hours to vote because they've cut off your ability to vote any other way through mail-in voting, through early voting, just your basic 10-hour-long wait. Don't expect to get food or water handed out by Good Samaritans who are just trying to help you because they want you to get out of line and not wait that 10 hours to vote. They want to limit your access to voting. Allow drop boxes at early voting sites only when the sites are open. That again severely limits a person's ability to drop off their ballot, because most people that are trying to drop it off after business hours have a job and have no choice but to drop it off then, and they know that. And again, it disproportionately affects poor and minority voters. Limits the use of mobile voting facilities such as buses to emergencies. So people that can't... Okay, this one really annoys me. Throw out provisional ballots cast in the wrong precinct. We already went through this when Arizona took this all the way to the Supreme Court, and they said that it is a zero-sum game. More people that are poor and have to move around a lot, that are disenfranchised, don't always know where their polling places are. And not all of them, it's not that they don't know how to use the internet. Before someone says that minority voters don't know how to use the internet, no, it is the fact that poor rural communities don't have access to the internet. Internet is a luxury, and not everyone has it. Not everyone has a phone that has it on it. I grew up in dirt poor Appalachia, and there is still not running water there, let alone fracking internet and cell service. We're talking about people that live in buses that deserve the right to vote on issues that directly affect them. Sorry guys, I'm getting a little heated here. Prohibits counties from accepting funding for elections, outside funding for elections. So, to help fix polling places, to add polling places, do things like that. Requires voters to have an excuse for absentee balloting, despite the fact that Georgia has offered absentee valid voting since 2005, done by the Republicans. They're mad now because it's becoming a lot closer, and the more access people have to vote, they know they don't stand a chance. So their main goal is to target as many minority communities as possible. Just look at who Trump targeted in his lawsuits, predominantly black counties and cities. I wonder why. Require a driver's license, ID number, or state ID to apply for an absentee ballot on paper. This is already required to apply for one online. Again, not everyone has an ID. Again, I grew up in poor Appalachia where not a lot of people had freaking IDs or running water. Required absentee voters to get their ballot envelope signed by a witness, enclose a copy of their photo ID with their ballot. Again, we already discussed that not everyone has a photo ID, and that strictly targets the poorest of the poor. And you were saying that if you are poor, you don't have the right to vote. Screw you, because it can be $175 to even get an ID when you have to get all the surrounding paperwork and pay for the ID itself. Also, elderly people don't necessarily have someone that can sign their ballots. That's just a fact. Elderly and disabled people. That is who that law targets, because they don't always have someone that can easily come by and sign their ballots for them. So now you're just saying, screw the elderly and the disabled, because they're more likely not to vote for you. Limit these. Okay. So there's a lot of overlap between these bills and others, so I won't even have to read the rest of the bills. But these are arcane. These would roll voting rights back to before Jim Crow. It is basically almost a literacy and means test, which the Supreme Court has ruled is not a way you judge to vote. But that's the way Republicans want, because again, they admitted the quiet part out loud when they went to the Supreme Court in Arizona and said it's a zero-sum game, and it's not fair to them when everyone's allowed to vote, because majority of Americans don't like their shit politics. All right, guys. I'm done for the night. I will see y'all later.